So we finally got our new faction in XDefiant in the GSK, a subsection of the GSG9 from Rainbow Six, and they are actually a very formidable faction already. Today I'm going to be running you guys through some basic tips on how you can dominate as the GSK in XDefiant Season 1. Now starting off just with their overall playstyle, it kind of goes without saying, but obviously the GSK is very focused on playing the objective and essentially locking down areas so that you and your teammates have a much better chance of actually taking those objectives. Now although they're pretty much decent when it comes to any of the objective modes, I would say they are especially great when it comes to capture the flag and occupy, where everyone is kind of focused on one or two areas at most, especially in occupy, because like I said, everyone is focused on just that one objective, and that is when their abilities really come into play and makes them, in my opinion, probably one of the best factions in the entire game. Now they're also fairly decent in the linear modes, but they're probably not quite as useful as they are in the arena modes, simply because in the linear modes, obviously the objective isn't really static, it is constantly sort of moving through the map, and that means, for example, if you put down shock wire to protect the payload in escort, eventually that payload is going to move past that, and that makes that ability kind of redundant in that moment. So they're still very good in those modes, but they're probably just not quite as good as they are in the arena modes. Now something else that I do have to mention too is that they obviously take less headshot damage, which has been pretty controversial within the community. It is worth keeping that in mind, but there's also nothing you can really do to implement that into your gameplay, so it's something to just, you know, be wary of. But like I said, you can't go around hoping to get headshot because it's going to take less damage. So pretty much just forget about it, but obviously keep it in the back of your mind. Now going through their two different abilities before we get into their ultimate, we're going to start off with the shock wire. Now this is a really good ability, again, like I said before, with capture the flag and occupy, because everyone is trying to get to those specific areas. So obviously in occupy, everyone's trying to get on the objective, or in capture the flag, everyone's trying to run past the flag and steal it. The shock wire being sort of a trap in those areas makes it really solid. And I've noticed, especially when I'm playing capture the flag, it can be really hard to try and take the enemy's flag when they are just putting the shock wire all around it. Honestly, one good player who's doing that can almost hold that flag down by themselves. Now something to keep in mind is that with 3 uses of the shock wire, it's probably best to put down multiple, because they can be taken out pretty easily. So if you, for example, just put one shock wire down on the flag, for example, then that isn't really going to do that much, because either A, someone's going to take it out quickly, or B, the enemy can kind of get out of it really fast. But if you're putting 3 of these down at once, and especially if you're playing with a teammate who is also playing GSK with the shock wire, you can have obviously a total of like 6 of these placed around the objective, and that is when they become really powerful. Now what I would say is that, like I said, put down multiple of them at once, but don't put them all right next to each other. You want to sort of strategically place them. For those who weren't aware, as far as I know anyway, the EMPs don't take out the shock wire, but regular grenades do. So any regular explosions will blow the wire up. And so if you put them all over the flag and capture the flag, but one enemy just throws a grenade, it'll pretty much take all of them out, giving them a clear path to take that flag. But if you place them out separately, then yes, they may take out one of them, but if you put multiple around the area, they're still going to have to get past those ones as well. So be thoughtful with where you're placing them. You want them to be essentially as close to the objective as you can without just spamming them all in the same spot, because like I said, they can be taken out very easily. Now just quickly, for those interested in making the weapon grind a little bit easier in XDefiant, MitchCactus.com has you covered, as they will actually grind weapon levels, attachments and skins for you while you're out at work or at school. They have well over 10,000 verified Trustpilot reviews. All of their packages are completely safe and legitimate. They also have 24/7 customer support and even a 100% money back guarantee. Head on over to MitchCactus.com using the link in the description and use code SAMMY for 5% off for a limited time only. Now their other ability is called the ADS, and again, this one is really good for occupy especially. I feel like that is essentially the game mode that this is pretty much designed for, because like I said, everyone's trying to get into that same area. If you're on the objective in occupy and the enemy team is trying to get in there, obviously they're going to be throwing a heap of grenades and stuff like that, and having an ADS down is going to pretty much just stop any of that from having any effect on you and your teammates, which can go a long way to keeping that objective and obviously winning the game. It's also really good for zone control too, despite what I said earlier about the linear modes not being quite as good for the GSK. I would say mostly on defense. In zone control, the ADS is definitely still very solid. Now the thing to keep in mind about the ADS is that it lasts 25 seconds and it will shoot down unlimited devices in that time frame. It's not like there's a set amount that it can take out and then after that it breaks or something. It will take out unlimited devices in that amount of time. So this thing is very solid. It can take out sometimes up to like 10 or more projectiles or explosives. And like I said, that can be the difference between winning or losing. Now, the key thing to keep in mind with the ADS though, is that you want to make sure you're putting it in kind of obscure positions where the enemy team isn't going to notice it. If it's just on the floor on the objective, it's going to get taken out straight away. Obviously, any grenades that get thrown towards it, it'll shoot them down, but that doesn't mean enemies can't just shoot it, and it is pretty weak. Once enemies start shooting at it, it's going to break almost instantly. So you want to find positions where it is kind of hidden, whether that's on a wall, whether that's on a piece of cover, or especially what I find works the most is putting it on the ceiling. It will still work, and most of the time enemies aren't going to be looking up. Even if it's not, you know, completely hidden, they just aren't going to look up most of the time. So put it in a position where you feel enemies aren't going to notice it. Eventually they probably will notice it, but it may have done its job by then. Whereas, like I said, if you put it on the ground, it's going to be essentially useless. Now, moving on to their ultimate, this is the Riot Shield. And not going to lie, this was actually something that I found pretty hard to use early on. Now, I suck with Riot Shields. I absolutely hate them in pretty much any shooter that I play, because it feels like when people use them against me, they are indestructible. When I use them, it feels like I die all the time. So I was struggling with this early on, but I realized that that's because I wasn't really utilizing all of its aspects. You don't want to just treat this like a regular Riot Shield or like the Phantom's Riot Shield, because it does obviously have the flash as well. Plus you can also use your pistol and shoot with this thing as well. So be sure to make the most of all of that. The flash is absolutely overpowered. If you sort of walk down enemies and they're just standing there shooting at you, hit them with the flash, then you want to kind of go to the side. If you just get out of your shield straight away, they're obviously going to be already looking at you, so kind of get out of their line of sight, and then at that point they're flashed and you're not where they think you are, and you can easily take them out. At that point it's very useful to use that pistol. What I would say about the pistol though is just don't use the pistol unless enemies are either flashed or just aren't looking at you. You are not going to win gunfights one-on-one with that pistol if the enemy knows where you are. So keep that in mind. That's pretty much the main way that I kept dying, was I just almost felt invincible and I'd just pull out the pistol and start shooting and just would die straight away. That is definitely not what you want to be doing. And the other thing to keep in mind too is that you can do the regular melee with this Riot Shield too, just like you can with any other Riot Shield in any other game. So this thing is really, really solid. It also lasts a fairly long time as well. And so I think with a lot of practice, you guys will get really decent with this. It is much better than the Phantom's one. And although I really don't like Riot Shields, I'm not going to lie, it is actually pretty damn fun to use. Now, lastly, we're just going to talk about a few weapons that I think are best for the GSK. Now, realistically, just any SMG or AR are probably the best weapons, just because obviously with a more close range type of playstyle being on the objectives and you've got a Riot Shield and stuff like that, those more close range weapons are definitely very solid. Even the shotgun, if you're good at using shotguns, that can be pretty decent as well. But yeah, I would definitely say SMGs like probably the MP7 and also the P90 are definitely ideal when it comes to the GSK. And then with assault rifles as well, realistically any of them, I would say actually the LVOAC, the new assault rifle, is really, really solid because of that faster rate of fire. Even the MDR is pretty solid too. Realistically, anything that can do well in close quarters is going to play really well with the GSK playstyle. But that is it for some basic tips and tricks when it comes to the new GSK faction in XDefiant Season 1. Guys, I'm keen to hear all of your thoughts down below. If you've got any of your own tips as well, leave them down in the comment section. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll catch you all out there in the arena.